You astound me. You have but a human body, and yet you carry such a power within you. You claim that you have no tears left to cry, no blood left to shed. But surely this is because you have filled yourself with fire. Though your body has long been covered in scars, fierce flames are all that now may flow, like molten iron from your eyes and your wounds. But we appear to have gotten off topic. The reason I followed the trail of smoke and tracked you down is that I wish to strike a deal with you. Let the flames that now devour you be extinguished by the grace of Her Majesty. What say you? Hey guys, I'm Clementine and I'm back with another installment of Genshin Impact lore and interesting things series. In this episode, we're going to be breaking down the different stories regarding the Pale Flame artifact set. I'll be diving into each artifact because there are too many details that shouldn't be left out. I have divided the video into 5 parts, added with an explanation of theories scattered across the Genshin communities. Each has a different story about the Fatui Harbingers, and it's interesting to see there are bits that you should know. Okay, so now let's start with the first artifact piece named Stainless Blue. A hard, blue artificial flower. Its petals shall never wither, nor shall its colors ever fade. The stainless bloom talks of a person who has suffered pain and sadness that has gotten to the point of showing so much rage and anger. Some people claim that this refers to Signora. However, the descriptions of having scars and fierce flames doesn't match with Signora. It is more lined up with the Crimson Witch of Flames who lived in Mondstadt 500 years ago. From her description, the Crimson Witch was once a maiden who had a mutual love for Rostam, also known as the Wolf Pup. At that time, Mondstadt was long been liberated by Vanessa, having the Knights of Favonius safeguarding the city's freedom. Arundolin was the current Grand Master at that time and was also the childhood friend and rival of Rostam. These two had an incredible bond and would defend Mondstadt from certain threats to their freedom. Going back to the Crimson Witch, at some point she left Mondstadt for Sumeru to study Piero. Now, before she left, Rostam gave her a Hydro timepiece to keep track of the amount of time she would be away. Shortly after she left, an event known as the Cataclysm caused Mondstadt into a state of danger. Monsters would spew forth, ravaging anyone or anything that stood before them. The Knights of Favonius would respond to this by embarking on an expedition to exterminate any monsters that they would encounter. Rostam led the expedition, heading on to the kingdom of Khanria, and fought valiantly at the battle. Sadly, Rostam was killed, leading to a huge loss for the Knights. Following the events, the Crimson Witch returned and got the news that her lover perished during the Cataclysm. As she mourned from his loss, she was filled with both rage and sadness. Having no more tears left to shed, she used her studies to sacrifice her body as an embodiment of liquid fire, becoming the Crimson Witch of Flames. She would travel the land burning monsters to death, much to the fear of any people who encountered her, even though she didn't endanger them. Looking back to the Stainless Bloom, Pedrolino, the first of the Fatui Harbinger, tracked down the Crimson Witch in trying to recruit her to join the Fatui. Reading from the text, the reason I followed the trail of smoke and tracked you down is that I wish to strike a deal with you. Let the flames that now devour you be extinguished by the grace of Her Majesty. What say you? With the Crimson Witch's response being, we share the same goal, you, your Tsaritsa and I. Cleanse the sources of distortion in this world, short-sighted, ignorant gods, and the darkness and corruption of the abyss. Good, I will do whatever it takes to become an effective instrument in the advancement of our common cause. For even if I dress in pure white from head to toe, the ashes of the dead that have long left their stain on every inch of my being can never be cleansed. In this story, Pedrolino mentions that the Crimson Witch carries a power that is unexpected for humans like them. If these are taken in a certain context, it can be said that she had been leaving a trail of destruction in her wake with her power. Apart from indicating that she is filled with regret, this is also where the name Stainless Bloom comes from. It comes from her longing to transform, to bloom, into someone who is clean, free from the stains left by her memories of the dead, specifically Rostam. Now let's take it into a deeper context. After the Crimson Witch's response to Pedrolino, it may be true that she agreed to be a part of the Fatui. Because she holds an incredible power, she has been promoted immediately as one of the Harbingers. Because most of the Harbinger names come from Commedia Dell'arte, the Crimson Witch became known as Columbina. In relation to this, Columbina means dove or a white bird. From the Commedia Dell'arte description, there is also the fact that the text explicitly mentions no tears left to cry and dress in pure white from head to toe. And the Columbina's constellation is that of a crying dove or a pure white bird. In addition, the witch's ever-burning plume, Crimson Witch Set, implies that she has some connection to birds. As she joins the Fatui, she also seems to have mentioned a glacial ice, which is most likely that Pedrolino gave her a cryo delusion. For Columbina's role in Commedia Dell'arte, she would act as a bold and clever servant girl. She does exhibit remarkable toughness and cunning against what she sees to be a man's world. She also wears an apron and a cap but would seldom use a comedian mask. Having no mask is said to have originated because of Columbina's vanity and not wanting to obscure too much of her beauty with a mask. Columbina usually speaks often in a Tuscan dialect, which has a lot of differences from the standard Italian dialect. The Tuscan dialect has a lot of words that may be perceived as obsolete or illiterate by non-Tuscans. Now going back to Columbina, she was also known to wear heavy makeup around her eyes and to carry a tambourine, which she could use to fend off the amorous advances of Pantalone. Little to what we know about her in-game counterpart, it seems that we may know more about her role in the story due to this piece of lore added into this new artifact set. So for now, let us talk about the second part. An ominous pinion with edges of unsurpassed keenness. Perhaps it represents an unnaturally uninhibited nature. The Wise Doctor's pinion starts with a theme similar to the Stainless Bloom, where the first of the Harbingers, Pedrolino, tracked down a student from the Sumeru Academia, a top school in Teyvat where they teach arcane arts and historical records. Now, this student had questionable ideas about elevating humans beyond what they were currently capable of, including whether they have visions or not. However, before he went to Sumeru, he was driven out from his hometown, which labels him as an outcast. In his notes, he laments the fact that conducting any thorough research would not be possible, given that the Sumeru Academia limits him by viewing him as an outcast. He continuously admits the need for a conducive environment and sufficient resources if he wants to finish the research. This is where Pedrolino comes into the fold and agrees to his conditions. Pedrolino recruited him and called him Dottore, which means doctor in English. After hearing his would-be title, he started to hysterically laugh due to the irony of his status. It is clear that Pedrolino recruited Dottore because of how he views humans as machines of a certain level of complexity. Pedrolino wanted him to create an enhanced human that could serve as weapons for the Fatui. This idea adds connection to Dottore using Collei for an experiment using arcane residue. Now, who is Collei? That would be explained in another video in the future. As for the meaning of the artifact, the name Sage Doctor's Pinion can be attributed to how Dottore, driven out from his homeland and treated poorly by the Sumeru Academia. The verb pinion refers to the act of binding, holding, or tying someone's arms or legs. His homeland and the Sumero Academia pinioned him and his ideas, which led him to affiliate himself with the only country willing to patronize them, Snezhnaya. The result of Dottore joining is the existence of the Fatui skirmishers, who are soldiers encased within a Fatui war machine. This also adds weight to the speculation as to why he is the third harbinger. A lot of the Snezhnaya's military power rests in the existence of the Fatui skirmishers, so if Dottore had joined the ranks of the harbingers later, rather than sooner, it's safe to say that the Fatui ranks would not be as powerful as it is right now. Going on to its real-life counterpart, Il Dottore is one of the old men or vecchi in the Commedia Dell'arte theater and is described to be extremely rich, pompous, and loves the sound of his own voice, usually speaking in a Latin or Greek dialect. Il Dottore's mask is unique in that it is a one-third mask. The mask itself is meant to be a parody of a Bolognese jurisconsult. His costume is usually all or mostly black, and he frequently wears a black felt hat with long, trailing robes. From his in-game appearance, his mask is also opposite to the real-life counterpart, being one-third from his face being shown. His function in the theater is to be an obstacle to young lovers. Him and Pantalone are usually the comedic duo, with him being the decadent erudite, while Pantalone being the wealthy and decadent merchant. Il Dottore is also fond of girls, however is untruthful and gets caught cheating several times. So he is more like a ladies' man. Now moving on to the third artifact piece. A pocket watch with a cover that cannot be opened. Yet it ticks and talks away, following the inexorable flow of time. The moment of cessation is a story about Pantalone. It is still unclear whether they are the fifth or the seventh harbinger. One of the only things we know about Pantalone is that it was largely thanks to his brilliance and foresight that Snezhnaya's economy is as prosperous as it is, according to the manager of Northland Bank, Andre. This leads to the fact that Pantalone is from Snezhnaya. The quote, "We shall, by whatever means necessary, become the heart that pumps money around the world," adds more proof to that. As we dissect the details from the artifact piece, Pantalone went from being destitute or poor to becoming either the fifth or seventh harbinger and was credited with the current state of Snezhnaya economy. He also attempted to sabotage Mondstadt's wine industry in order to further Snezhnaya's exports. This was based on Noel's character story and Landa at Wangshu Inn. This implies that Pantalone is pretty closely linked to money and was recruited by the Fatui to turn Snezhnaya's economy as the Vat's leading economic power. The name, Moment of Cessation, can be attributed to the lines of "become the heart that pumps money around the world," and "a heart that will only cease beating by our will alone." The term cessation is the noun form of the verb to cease. The moment of cessation refers to the moment the heart that is Snezhnayan economy stops pumping money throughout the Vat, all through the will of Pantalone. His goal is to usurp Mondstadt's wine industry and make Snezhnaya to be the beating heart of the world, which is probably accomplished now that Zhongli gave up his gnosis and Liwei is unable to be the sole source of Mora anymore. One thing that may shock you is that this Fatui harbinger doesn't have a vision. This fact is very explicitly mentioned twice from the quotes, "He was not one of the favored, and could only pursue worldly power," and "the gods had never looked upon him with favor," ignited a burning desire for resistance inside him. There's not much else to say about this apart from what this would imply about him as a playable character, but it's possible that he was granted a delusion due to his status of being a harbinger, and that will be the element he'll be associated with when he's implemented as a playable character. As for his real-life origins, Pantalone means pants in English. However, in the Commedia dell'arte, it means money, and his full name is Pantalone de Bisognosi, which is Italian for Pantalone of the Needy. Pantalone is a well-known Commedia dell'arte character. The original name of this character was an old man named Magnifico. He spoke in plain, yet musical Venetian dialect. The original name soon gave way to the more well-known Pantalone. Another possible origin is the term Piantaglioni, a name used for the merchants who opened their stalls in conquered lands and symbolically planted the lion of St. Mark to extend the power of the city of Venice through trade. Pantalone's character in the Commedia is generally an old merchant, often wealthy and esteemed, at other times completely ruined, yet always an old man in every detail with business skills. He plays one of the most important characters in the theater. His mask typically highlighted his physical characteristics, including a hooked nose and prominent eyebrows, and most of the time, having a curled mustache. Now, as I said before, we have little info about his appearance, so it's not sure whether his appearance in-game will follow its real-life counterpart. For the next artifact piece, an intricately made cup, its appearance betrays nothing of its age to an observer. The surpassing cup talks about the sixth harbinger, Scaramouche, who we met earlier in the Unreconciled Stars event. Before getting into this, let us read the text as to why Scaramouche is the one being referred to in the surpassing cup. He was born with a face fairer than any other, destined to a long life and a hollow will. He was a transcendent being, divinely created, but he was cast aside like worthless dross. Yet, due to an error that cannot be known, he roused himself from slumber and began to wander the mortal realm. Before the Fatui found him, he had drifted for countless years, and in that time, this is what his experience had taught him. I am a human who surpasses all others. Even the gods daren't meddle in my fate. Neither mortal nor god, nor fate itself, is qualified to be my judge. I am free to choose how I wish to spend the remainder of my days. Since this mask-wearing people are so fun to be around, I think I'll become one of them. From this, Scaramouche is older than he looks, canonically being older than Tartaglia, who is the youngest of the Harbingers, and La Signora, which can explain why he is the sixth of the Harbingers. He also wears an electro symbol on his chest, and the text makes Scaramouche out to be a rather confusing origin. He claims himself to be human, yet is described to be a transcendent being, who was divinely created and is destined to a long life. Another one is how Scaramouche has a different approach as to becoming a harbinger. This fact makes Scaramouche very different from the other harbingers we know of so far. Colombina showed us that she has respect for the Tsaritsa and ensures that the Tsaritsa is aligned with her goals. Dottore and Pantalone are aligning themselves with the Tsaritsa because it's through siding with her that they are able to accomplish their goals. In the text, it is described Scaramouche determining that he's free to choose how he will spend the rest of his long life. He decides to spend it with a Fatui, for the simple reason that it's fun to be around them. It seems understandable because it is implied that Scaramouche has a hollow will, meaning empty. His appearance may have also been inspired from the character Raiden May of Honkai Impact 3rd. Judging from the colors and the hairstyle, it is highly possible that this was where he was based off on. Before we jump into the theory parts, let us discuss his Commedia origins first. Now, most of us are familiar with the term Scaramouche because it was mentioned twice in the famous song Bohemian Rhapsody. However, in Commedia, Scaramouche originated from the term Scaramuccia, which means little skirmisher. It also means small, fast fray, giving the idea of a soldier who doesn't involve himself too much in battle. And this is his way of fighting too, a little touch here and a short attack there. Scaramouche is also more of a ladies' man than a fighter, and in reality is a great friend of Pulcinella. Scaramouche was first developed by an Italian actor named Tiberio Fiorilli, and it is where the mask got its facial features. Talented and artistic, the Fiorilli Scaramouche was also strong, agile, graceful, sang with a good voice, and played the lute. This is also why most of the prints of Scaramouche show him with a lute or guitar. Now let us go back to the artifact piece. For the theory part of the Surpassing Cup, it is believed by many that the Surpassing Cup provides a significant nod to support the theory that Scaramouche is a clone of Baal. The description of the cup states that he was born with a fairer face than any other, which would be a reasonable comment to make of a male character cloned of a female ascendant. Next is that he was destined for a long life and a hollow will. It is speculated that this line refers to the fact that in order for Baal to remain eternal, she has a method of preparing cloned vessels with no soul or consciousness of their own, a hollow will, in order to live forever and remain eternal. Moving on, he is described as divinely created, which of course would be true if he was created either by those in Celestia or Baal, or by Baal herself, as she too is considered divine by Genshin standards. But he was cast aside, perhaps for some sort of imperfection by Baal's standards. Maybe like forming as a male instead of a female presenting body, maybe something more substantial, and for reasons unknown, he awoke, proving he was never meant to live a life of his own. It is considered a mistake that he awoke. This would also explain how the description can label him as someone who is both transcendent or divinely created but also human. He is a human, but one created by divine means, not natural ones, similar to how Albedo calls himself as homuncular. Now for the reason why this piece is called Surpassing Cup. It is theorized that Scaramouche is planning to surpass the Electro Archon as an act of revenge. It would also provide an answer why Inazuma is closed to outsiders, and it gives a strong motive for Baal's actions. Perhaps she was previously unaware that her former vessel survived, and upon discovering this revelation, is now fearful of Scaramouche as an alternative heir to her throne and someone who could match her power due to him being born of her own flesh. For the last artifact piece, a mask that covers the face, hiding one's expression from others. The mocking mask reveals the owner literally spells out his name as Pedrolino or Piero, who is the first of the harbingers, also known as the Jester, the one who recruited at least 3 of the Fatui harbingers. As quoted from the description, "Since the stain of my compatriot's blood cannot be cleansed, I shall become the Jester, who laughs in the face of fate. Since my level of learning could not compare with the sages, I failed to earn the favor of the previous ruler. So too did I fail to stop them from tearing away the veil of sin, ushering in a tide of divine wrath, destruction, and foolishness. Then I shall become instead a fool, a fatus, and devote myself to Her Majesty, who understands my pain. My name is Piero, the Jester. Please listen to the words I have to say, proud Fatui comrades. I know your hearts harbor both the fires of rage and the cold of eternal winter. Each one of us has borne witness to the absurd callousness of the foundational principles of this world. So, let us don our masks in mockery of the world as we go forth and rewrite the rules of destiny." The description is read as Pedrolino's speech, which is likely one that he gave when he first took on the role as the Jester. Based on it, it can be speculated that he was one of those who bore witness to what happened 500 years ago, the event that resented the Tsaritsa. He admits fault in being unable to stop this event from happening, and shifts his loyalty towards the Tsaritsa who understands his pain, thus becoming the first of the Fatui. This now has a whole different meaning for the Fatui. It is now confirmed that they were formed after what happened 500 years ago, and from what we dissected in these stories, it confirms that the Fatui and Snezhnaya as a whole have an end goal, one that supposedly justifies the means of their actions, trying to collect all the gnosis of each archons. Now let's talk about Pedrolino's role in the Commedia Dell'arte. Pedrolino is described to be a servant dressed in white, who is usually portrayed as a young and reliable valet. He has a French version which is named Piero that has a different appearance from the Italian version. Unlike most of the other stock characters, he did not develop the fixity of characters that the other masks did. He played without a mask and his face was whitened with powder, lives in his own world in the world of Commedia, and is too embarrassed to face the audience. However, Pedrolino became tremendously popular in later French pantomimes as the naive and appealing Piero. Moving on to the theory part, Dainsleif in Tevat chapter's storyline preview, Travail, mentions a rebellion against the divine. However, for Pedrolino, he says that they are to rewrite the rules of destiny. Columbina says that it is cleansing the sources of distortion in this world, which includes both of the gods in Celestia and the Abyssal Order. The 11 Harbingers and the rest of the Fatui will do this with a smile on their faces, laughing at the world. Pedrolino even specifically mentions donning masks in mockery of the world, which is where the name Laughing Mask comes from. The name Fatui, which comes from the Latin word for fools, was not an ironic name. The Tsaritsa and Pedrolino adopted it knowing that the universe is absurd and they are equally as foolish for defying it. And it is up to the future of the story in Genshin Impact to see what these fools will do next. Well, I hope you enjoyed my video about the Pale Flame artifact set. The lore and interesting details done by MiHoYo is so impressive, and a lot of cultures are referenced in their in-game counterparts. MiHoYo did a great job connecting all these cultures with one another and making a story that will finish in more years to come. As always, if you have some thoughts about the video, as well as suggestions for future ideas, leave a comment and let us know. Thank you very much for watching, and if you've hung around till the end and think it deserves one, give the video a like. If you want more videos like this in the future, considering subscribing to be notified for more videos on Genshin Impact lore. Once again, my name is Clementine, and as usual, until the next one, be safe and stay tuned.